Missing children have always been a part of what's, our society, but they didn't really become publicized or talked about or studied or even have in numbers until the late 70s, early 1980s. If a child went missing, it would just be in that city, and it wouldn't spread out into the next state or into the next county, and it would just be housed by that individual police agency. There were 3 big cases that started a public discussion around missing children. Eitan was 6 years old in New York City, was walking to school, and never made it to school. His dad, is a professional photographer, and so had hundreds of pictures of Eitan in different poses and different very crisp images, and so he was the first face on a milk carton when people think of that image, because we had so many good pictures of Eitan. That case is still active and open. They just did a big search about 2 years ago for someone who they had a search dog that thought there might be some human remains in the basement of a store near where he was walking to school. Nothing was found, but it remains active and open. Adam Walsh, in 1981, Adam was at a Sears store with his mom. His mom was looking at stuff, and he was playing one of those video game consoles that they have that doesn't really go to the next level. And you just keep, as a kid, playing that level over and over again until your parent is done shopping. I'm sure you've been there. And 2 older boys were playing the video game as well, and they got into a physical altercation with each other, and the person working at the shop kicked all 3 boys out of the store. Said, if you guys can't handle, you guys need to leave. And Adam was kicked outside with the 2 older boys, not being able to advocate for himself that he was not with them and he was with his mom. And when his mom came back to the video game and he wasn't there, she started looking for him, couldn't find them. Police were called. Adam's body was recovered, and there was a confession of someone in prison that he had been responsible, Otis O'Toole. And so that case, though, began this outcry, and Adam's parents getting very involved in being an advocate for what works, how can we make this better, how can we prevent this from happening. And then the Atlanta child murders from 1979 to 1981, dozens of African American children and young adults went missing in Georgia. 20 of them showed up deceased. Wayne Williams was tried for 2 of the 22 murders and was found guilty of those 2. And so all 3 of these cases happening in that same window of time got people wondering, how much does this happen? And then Adam's case spawned a TV movie about it, and at the end of the TV movie they started putting up Face of Missing Children, but they needed a hotline number, someone to start answering those calls, and so that was sort of began the conversation of how can we nationally keep track of these numbers and these stories. So in 1984, they established the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the agency in the Washington, D.C. area that both monitors these cases, helps with case assistance, helps with extra resources, posters, flyers. They do amazing work. In 1984, so Jacob was abducted in 1989, and Patty and Jerry said, what could we have done differently? What tools could we have had to make this better? And what law enforcement said was we would really have liked it if there was a registry of where all the sex offenders live, so that we could go and knock on doors and start right away with who have already been convicted of these crimes in case it's someone who's done this again. And so the Jacob Wedding Crimes Against Children Act was passed, and then 2 years later, Megan's Law was added to that, which allowed for notification in some cases. And so these are the measures to enact for missing children at risk. Some of the highlights are around the 80s, as Missing Children Act was passed in 1982. And the Missing Children's Act says there's no waiting period for a case of a missing child. You can't say to a parent, well, wait 24 hours, and if your child hasn't come back yet, make a report. In 1982, it's an immediate entry into NCIC.